Hello and welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, we'll be taking a look at masking and minimaps. Now, in this particular scene here, we're using a real-time minimap to take our environment that's been rendered onto a render texture and then project that onto our 2D radar. Now, if our character moves around here, you'll notice that we can see that character moving through the world, and that's as real as it gets. So one thing that we're going to want to do here really quickly, I'm going to go into my designs area, fold up the minimap section quickly. Now I'm going to increase my scene scale, which is currently set to 5. And let's take a better look at the world, and let's move our character around. We take a look at the minimap. So currently I'm only moving the character based on what I'm seeing inside of the minimap itself. All right, now let's quickly take a look at how we set up this particular minimap. And it's actually quite simple, and it doesn't require any coding whatsoever. So before I start, I'm going to delete this camera called real-time minimap camera, as we're going to start over, and we're going to remove this render texture. And also remove the mask and masked material. Now by default, all 2D and 3D radar builders have a little button to the upper right in their editor called Minimap. And when you turn on the Minimap, you get this Minimap settings foldout. Inside the Minimap settings foldout, you'll be presented with this particular interface. Firstly, you have the option of turning on real-time or static minimaps. We'll be showing you both. As for real-time minimaps, the setup is quite easy. In the radar builder packages, you get an example render texture material. You can just go ahead and drag on the render texture material here. And then you can go ahead and click Create Minimap Camera. What will happen next is that your created minimap camera will assign itself into the minimap camera area, and the render texture will be placed inside of the target texture area inside of your real-time minimap camera. So it does that work for you. And then next is camera height. Camera height determines the position of the camera in the y-axis in world space. Now we have map material and mask material. Because you want to clip certain parts of the render texture, as it's a square and we need to have it inside of this circle, we need to give the material of the texture that will have the render texture on it a material that will be masked, and then we need to put a mask over it to clip off the parts outside. And again, we give you these materials, so you just open here and then pick, just write in MASK and select masked. And these are just the example materials. You can use your own shaders to do this. And there we go, masked and mask. And again, we want this to be on our radar UI layer. All right, it seems that we're set up here. If we just go ahead and run the scene now. All right, here we go. Now we'll need to go down here to scale, and again, increase our scene scale because 5 is too small. And there we can see our world, and we can move through that world quite easily. Okay, now let's take a look at the static minimaps. All right, and for the static minimap, what we're going to do here is that we're going to use a screenshot of our scene, which I already have. So I took a aerial screenshot of this particular scene here, and I edited it, and I'm now going to reuse it as the map for this particular scene. Now, how we actually set up the static minimap is quite simple. We're going to actually use a function here called calibrate minimap. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on calibrate minimap. I will see that we have map scale set to 0. So we're using the same settings that we had before as it relates to the map material, the mask material, the layer, and the order in the layer. Those are all the same. We just turn on calibrate minimap, switch to static, and we're going to set this value here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this scene, but hold on. First thing, I don't want our camera to be moving around because then it will make it difficult to it'll make it difficult for us to calibrate this map. You know, actually it doesn't matter. I'll just go ahead and turn that on, and I'll just run the scene, and we'll just begin calibrating it. All right, so here we go. There's our map, and these are our objects in the scene. Now I recognize the position of these objects here as being these two objects here. And that's what these two are. And here we have our map in the back. Now what I'm going to want to do here is something that's just quite simple. I'm going to just quickly just pause this scene. I'm going to go back to my game view here, and it should still scale it. So I'm going to go down, select my 2D radar, go down to the minimap, open that out, select the minimap pivot, open that out, select map, and then I'm going to proceed to begin scaling it. So I'm just going to find it here. I'm going to zoom down to it, and I'm just going to scale it until it matches. And usually what I would do is make the blips as small as possible so that I get very accurate positioning. So I would go to my blips area, I would select any one of these blips, and I would go to rotation scale, and I would make the blip as small as possible, just like this. And we're already pretty close in scale, and I'm just gonna scale it down until it's exactly where I feel comfortable with it being, right there. And then I'll just select this value, Control C to copy it, and just like that, I'll exit play mode. And we'll go back to the designs area here, and for map scale, I'll put in the value that I just copied out, and then we'll turn off calibrate minimap, and there we go, we've calibrated the minimap. And now when we run the scene, the blips should be in a position that is very accurate for the minimap. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the character run around the scene, but I'll only be looking at the minimap and not at the player itself, just to test the accuracy of the calibration. Okay, let's go ahead and turn on our character. Seems that turned it off. So tap here. All right, there we go. Let's turn off the gizmos. All right, there we go, and everything seems to be working just fine. Well, the screen recorder is making everything move a little bit slow there. So that covers the minimaps. And there's one more thing that I want to show you, and it's the method by which we can make radars have any shape. So for this one, I'm going to go to an example scene called shaped radar. And as you can see, there are quite a lot of scenes here. We're not going to save this scene here. And I'm going to select this 2D radar. And we'll go to the designs area here. And go down to map settings. Now let's see if we can find this radar in the scene. All right, there it is. Now remember what I was mentioning before, using the ignore diameter scale. If we scroll down to scale here, we notice that we have ignore diameter scale turned on. And this is for good reason. So the radar is twice its normal size, and we've turned on ignore diameter scale. So we're only going to be rendering what's in here. And we're using for the minimap, we're using again, the masked material and the mask. But now for custom mask sprite shape, we're using this shape to make the radar take this shape instead of a circle. All right, so if we went ahead and run this scene now, what you see is a minimap which doesn't have a circular shape. And we could very well use any sprite for this. We could just use any sprite to make the radar have any shape. But it's important to have on ignore diameter scale when using the shaped radar setting here. So let's wait for this to load. And there we go. It matches the background, so it may be a little bit difficult to see. But if I begin moving around here, you begin to see it much more clearly. So there we got that radar shape. And we still have the tracking going on in there. Now you can make that look as good as you want it to. You could use whatever sprite you want and give that a proper shape in there if you want. We're not going to go that far with it. And this will be the last tutorial here. So I'm just going to jump into another scene and quickly show you something else. So this is a first-person screen space 3D minimap, which also utilizes a minimap inside a 3D radar. So if I go ahead and select this 3D radar, we can see that we have screen space turned on, and we're going to turn on minimap. Down in our minimap section, we'll see that we already have our values set in here. And I'm going to go ahead and run this scene. Now, one thing when you combining as many functions as this particular radar is that some of them may clash. So when you're using a already first-person screen space and a 3D radar using tracking lines, and now it's using a minimap, there's bound to be some issue. So I'll point that out in this particular example. So while everything appears to be moving quite nicely, there's one thing that I'd love to point out to you. If we stabilize this rotation here, so we can stabilize that rotation by selecting, let me go ahead and select the 3D radar, and we said freeze. Trying to remember what exactly that setting was again and that's it. So here we go. So you'll notice that what's happening here is that there seem to be two different things happening. The base trackers aren't actually on the points here where they should be. So we usually don't use the minimap at the same time that we're using this system. So we usually turn off the minimap or run it without the minimap. If we freeze, go ahead and just freeze these in here. The tracking then becomes far more accurate, and then you can have your minimap in your first-person screen space system. But there's some things that you need to be aware of when you're mixing different functions together, this being one of them. All right, that covers all of the tutorials so far. If you have any questions, you can either leave a comment below or better yet, send an email and you'll get a reply as soon as possible. So thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next videos.